Hi everyone, it's Lisa, and I'm back with the second video in my Hashimoto. Hey everyone, it's Lisa, and I'm back with my next video in my Hashimoto series about resources and other particular pieces of information that I think were very helpful. So I'm just going to jump right into it. The first is a companion set of books and a website, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the books, but I started with the website. The first book is called Stop the Thyroid Madness, A Patient Revolution Against Decades of Inferior Thyroid Treatment. This book was written by Janie Bowthorpe, and essentially years and years of information she has pulled together based on patient experience. She's not a doctor. She has a master's in education, but she's not a doctor. She actually started with an online group, if I remember correctly, and her companion website is www.stopthethyroidmadness.com. That was actually where I started in this journey, because Google allows you to sort of search everything, and oh my goodness, when you're desperate, that's what you find is sites and resources. So if you'll go to that site and look around, you'll see that essentially it's broken down into multiple parts, and one of the first things is sort of the whole, this is what patients know, and that's really what Janie is known for. She has pulled together patient experience, and what she has then put into a book is a lot of the same information from the website condensed into a single resource, which is really awesome. So depending upon your format, if you prefer online versions of information or if you prefer books, you could go either way. I'm such an information junkie, I went both. So I still refer to the website in a lot of ways for certain pieces of information. So one of the things that she advocates is that the TSH test is just useless in anything, and that T4 only medications like Thyroid, I think it goes by levothyroxine or something like that as a generic, are just not the best medications for treating. She also talks a lot about what the proper labs are that you really need, and through the book and the website you can find out what patients have found as far as ranges go for optimization of their thyroid. It's interesting to note that there are a lot of ranges for labs. If you get lab work done, you'll see it will say this is your number and then this is the range. But ranges are created based on pools of people that may or may not be similar to you, and you can read a lot more about it in both the book and on the website. But this is by far one of the most empowering pieces of work, plus her website, that I have ever encountered, because it is the voice of lots and lots of patients who have thyroid disorders who come together and say, many of them, my doctor says my labs are fine, I feel like crap. I don't know what's going on, I feel like I'm going crazy. So I think it's very, very important for patients to understand that not only do other people go through the same thing, but we've all banded together and we've shared information, and Janie has been kind enough to pull it all together into a usable resource so that we can say, no, this is not acceptable. I don't feel right. I'm not crazy. I don't need antidepressants. I don't need birth control pills. I need this. And it really, really is very empowering. Recently, Janie came out, she's the editor of this book called Stop the Thyroid Madness 2. How thyroid experts are challenging ineffective treatments and improving the lives of patients. This is not so much written by Janie as much as it is pulled together by her. It is multiple practitioners who have come together and written about different topics, including the unreliable TSH test, lab results and their ranges, stress, adrenals, and the thyroid, gluten intolerance, a lot of things that practitioners see. I skimmed this book more than I read it. It can get a little deep into sort of the medical side of it. It's interesting, but it's not the place to start if you're just starting out, that's for sure. But once you get a really good grip on what's going on with thyroid health, it's a good thing to know. I also have heard that there's been some really good interactions with patients who have provided this resource to their doctor, and their doctor's been open to reading it because it is written by practitioners. The different sections are written by different practitioners. Doctors are more open to listening to this type of information versus patient information that's pulled together. So I think they're both really good resources. Again, the website is also a great place. There is a companion Facebook group. There's several of them actually that go along with it. I'm going to be linking all of the books, links to the books, and links to the websites I mentioned down in the description bar. So if you're interested in that, then be sure to check out all of that information down there. I'm going to talk about 2 other books. This is not a paid video. I'm not sponsored in any way to talk about any of this, but I do want to mention a couple of resources that I think are important to me, and if you find them helpful, then I think that's great. I see my doctor is Dr. Sheridan at the Hotze Health and Wellness Center, and Dr. Hotze has been involved in hypothyroidism, hormones, women's health, men's health for quite some time here in the Houston area. And I have read a couple of his books. The first is Hypothyroidism, Health and Happiness. And it's a really quick read about how thyroid works and how it all is connected. For me, it was important to read this because it really helped give me some ideas about why he started the Hotze Health and Wellness Center and why he believes in what he believes in. He has another book, which I don't have a copy of. I'm sure I loaned it to someone, called Hormones, Health and Happiness, a natural medical formula for rediscovering youth with bioidentical hormones. That particular book is very good too, but it leans more towards not so much thyroid as much as bioidentical hormones from the standpoint of sex hormones such as progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, those types of things. So another good resource. I'm going to save this one for last. I'm going to jump into, I have Hashimoto's, so this one may not apply to you if you just have thyroid issues. This one is called Hashimoto's Thyroiditis, Root Cause, Lifestyle Interventions for Lifestyle Interventions for Finding and Treating the Root Cause. Isabella Wentz, I believe she's a pharmacist, wrote this. Really, really good book about Hashimoto's and trying to dig down into what is making antibodies so high in Hashimoto's and trying to address those particular issues in order to help treat Hashimoto's. It's very Hashimoto specific, but I very much enjoyed it because it talked a lot about toxins, adrenals, the gut. There's a lot of evidence out there that if your gut needs to be healed, whether you have leaky gut, candida overgrowth, that type of thing, that contributes to inflammation and Hashimoto's antibodies. So another very good resource. This one is called The Thyroid Diet Revolution, Manage Your Master Gland of Metabolism for Lasting Weight Loss by Mary Shannon. This one is very good because it talks about what to eat and how it affects you. So if you're looking very specifically for some information about how to eat in such a way that you maximize your thyroid gland and the way it works, this is another very, very good resource. And then sort of the basics of it all. I think this one might be a little bit hard to find, but Hypothyroidism, the Unsuspected Illness by Broda Barnes and Lawrence Galton. So Broda Barnes is sort of the guru of thyroid health from the very beginning. And so this was sort of revolutionary in a way. I believe the very first one, yes, 1976 is the very first copyright on this. So here's Dr. Barnes talking about, this is what thyroid deficiency, here's how it manifests itself. Here's how you get flawed diagnoses. Here's how it affects fatigue and headache, infectious diseases. So it's kind of the starting point for hypothyroidism, and you'll hear a lot of people reference things like, I'm trying to find a Broda Barnes doctor. That is a doctor who subscribes to the Broda Barnes thinking as far as thyroid goes. And that is part of the reason that I am a patient of the Hotze Health and Wellness Centers, because I was looking for a Broda Barnes type doctor. And while there isn't a lot of advertisement on Hotze's site about being a Broda Barnes type practitioner, if you dig deep enough, you will find that he was influenced by Broda Barnes. So those particular items from a thyroid standpoint are very, very good for research and reading. Again, if you are just starting out and you've just been either given a diagnosis of underactive thyroid or overactive thyroid, if you've been given a diagnosis recently of Hashimoto's, if you suspect you have a thyroid problem, but you're not certain and you feel like maybe your doctor is blowing you off, my very first place I would tell you to start would be stopthethyroidmadness.com and go from there. Read through the website. There's some really great places to start. What kind of labs, getting all your ducks in a row, understanding some things. It can be a little overwhelming, but you can also go to Facebook and look for the companion groups to Stop the Thyroid Madness. And there's a really great group of administrators that work on those Facebook groups that help people with not so much diagnosis and not necessarily prescribing anything or recommending anything, just simply saying, based on patient experience, we find that this is typically true, and your pattern of labs or your pattern information does not fit into that. So part of the reason I bring this one up, the thyroid diet revolution, is because I think that food is very important for overall health, for weight maintenance, and I want to share some other books and resources that I have used in order to help make better food decisions. In addition to the thyroid diet revolution, in 2014, I jumped on a challenge with Lisa Leake, who is a blogger. She has a blog called 100 Days of Real Food. And she subsequently wrote a book. But essentially, she's a mom, she's married, has 2 kids. She decided that her family, she just didn't like some of the ingredients in the foods her family were, the ingredients that her family was eating in foods. So they took a challenge. For 100 days, they weren't going to eat anything that had anything they couldn't pronounce, that had been manufactured in a lab, for example, chemicals, that type of thing. And she started to make some things. She started to try to really find some things that weren't processed. Very interesting blog. She subsequently wrote a book called 100 Days of Real Food. This is a very good resource because it is both a story about how she did what she did and a very good cookbook. So once I went into this challenge and I came back out of it, I don't want to say that I don't eat processed foods to this day. I do eat some processed foods, but I know how to make good choices, and I know the choices that I'm comfortable with versus the ones that I'm not. So to that end, not only did I read this book, 100 Days of Real Food, and work on the companion website with that, I also read a book called The Unhealthy Truth, How Our Food is Making Us Sick and What We Can Do About It by Robin O'Brien. She had a child who suffered from a food allergy. She'd never experienced it before. She started to do a lot of research. And what she discovered is that not only are there tons of chemicals in processed foods, but the way food is manufactured and the way that process is managed by the Food and Drug Administration and the USDA is very, very fascinating, and to some degree more politically driven than it is best interest of people. And that's my own opinion. But I think it's a great read if you're really interested in how processed foods are managed in the US and why they are the way they are. Related to that, Pandora's Lunchbox, How Processed Food Took Over the American Meal by Melanie Warner. Fantastic resource for kind of a historical look back on how we moved from a society where we basically either make all of our own food in our own household or we buy it directly from the person who makes it. So for example, and how we moved to, that's not how it works at all today, obviously. So for example, how we went from getting milk and cheese directly from the dairy, literally the dairy makes it and put it on a truck and the milk guy came by and delivered it, to buying something like a Velveeta processed cheese loaf in the store. So if you're kind of a history buff and you're interested in how we got from point A to point Z, that is a very good book. I was editing this video and I realized that there was one book that I really wanted to mention that I didn't. And it actually has nothing to do with Hashimoto's and has nothing to do with food, but I think it's really important to understand the context behind why we do the things that we do. The book is called The Power of Habit: Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business by Charles Duhigg. It is an amazing book about how habits are formed and how they're broken. And it's not a self-help book. It is actually somewhat scientific, although written at a level that makes it easy for the average reader to understand. And it talks a lot about how the emotional and cultural and scientific aspects of our lives kind of converge to create a habit, why habits are necessary for human existence almost, and how you can step into the various components of a habit in order to break it. And I bring it up because in dealing with any kind of long-term illness, in dealing with all of the effects of a long-term illness, it can be very difficult and scary to make the changes that need to be made. Sometimes it's a matter of you don't really know where to start, but more often than not, it's being afraid to start. Because anytime you begin to question the way things have been, it means that something's going to change, and that can be very scary. So I wanted to add that book in. I think it's very relevant to having an autoimmune disorder or a long-term illness like Hashimoto's or underactive thyroid. So I encourage you to check it out. I've listed all of the resources that I've talked about here down below in the description bar. I'm so glad you're watching this video. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear from you. You can email me directly or feel free to leave a comment down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and I will talk to you later.